Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Books Weekly. For those of you who might be new to the channel, Books Weekly is my Sunday video in which I discuss books that I've either finished from a previous week or read last week or started last week. And the first book I want to talk to you about is the book that I finished from the previous week, and that is Persepolis, A Story of a Childhood, a graphic novel by Marjane Satrapi. Now, Marjane Satrapi is an Iranian-born novelist and graphic illustrator. This is, like I said, it's a graphic novel. And she was born in Iran and then escaped to Vienna first, and now she lives in France. So the book was written in France, in France, yeah, in French, and translated by Mattias Ripa in 2000. I read this book for a book club I've already mentioned a couple of times, the Read Around the World book club that was initiated by Mel from Mel's Bookland Adventures. As always, I will leave links to the Goodreads group down below. It's a really interesting and fascinating group because we read a book by a female author from a different country each month. And in September, the pick was Persepolis. Now, I have to say that I'm not big with graphic novels. I hardly ever read them. I didn't like comic books or comics when I was a child. I didn't much care for illustrated books or these typical, picture books for children. I don't know. I'm weird that way. But I want to, delve more into things that I normally don't do. So I was really happy that this was the pick for September. And I enjoyed it. I really like the artwork. I already showed you it's very quiet, black and white artwork. I really enjoyed that. And I liked the story, which is a memoir in the form of a graphic novel. So Satrapi's life during the Iranian Revolution in 1979, before that and after that. I think this is a really, really good book if you want to learn something about the Iranian Revolution. Because for me, it read more, I think I said that already last week, it read almost like a non-fiction book. A memoir is a sort of a non-fiction book. So the story that fascinated me was much more what you learn about Iran and the Iranian Revolution. So for people who are interested in that, in the history of Iran during, before, and after the revolution, I think this is a great pick because it's really well told and you learn a lot. The story as a memoir didn't entirely convince me, like I said, because I felt that it was rather detached. You learned a lot about the surroundings, but it was not, for the most part, the personal account of Satrapi's life. Yeah, I missed that a little bit, but maybe that was just me. So let me know if you read it, what you thought of it. But I really liked it, and there's a second volume, Persepolis, when she returns to Iran later on after finishing school, and I will certainly pick the second volume up as well. And the next book I read was Rene Denfeld's new novel, The Child Finder, which just came out in September of this year. Now, if you've follow my channel for any length of time, you might remember or you might know how much I absolutely adored Rene Denfeld's debut novel, which came out in 2014, The Enchanted. I thought it was a brilliant book, very dark, but brilliant. It's one of my absolute favorite books, I would say, from the last 5 years. It's in the top 10 of those books. So I was looking forward to her new novel, of course. Rene Denfeld is an American author. She lives in Portland, and she is a licensed investigator. She worked on many cases for the defense attorney, so finding children is one of her specialty. She worked death row cases. So she works in that legal surrounding, and you can feel that when you read her books. The Child Finder is about, like the title says, finding children. So the main character is Naomi, more or less the same profession as Rene Denfeld has. She's a licensed investigator specializing in finding children. There's something in Naomi's past, which we will later on discover, that sparked this interest. Yeah, it's more of an urge to help find children. And there are two cases in the book, the two main cases, and one is Madison, a little girl of 5 years old who disappeared 3 years before the novel starts, and Naomi is asked by Madison's parents, who wouldn't give up, who wouldn't, want to acknowledge that Madison might be dead, when they lost her, quote unquote, in the forest in winter. So Naomi is asked to investigate and to find out what happened to Madison. There's also another case involving a young woman who is in jail because she's accused of having killed her baby. The baby is missing, and Naomi investigates that case as well. Now, as I said, I was really looking forward to this book, and it didn't quite live up to my expectations, which is probably also my fault, because if you have very high expectations, that's never a good way to enter a book. I thought the language, again, was really beautiful. It's very subtle, quiet, but lyrical language, descriptions of landscapes, but also very dreamy parts when you are in Madison's head, when she invents stories. I like that very much. My main issue, why I was a bit disappointed in the end, was the plot. And that was because after, I think, the second page, or I don't know, page 10, when Naomi goes to the sheriff's office in the county where Madison lived to ask for the file, she looks at certain items. I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil you, but she looks at certain items, and I immediately knew what the story will be, what had happened to Madison, who did what. And I don't think, of course, you can read a book then also because the language is, beautiful, and because you want to know how then the author develops the story. But it spoiled it for me because it is a kind of a thriller, and when you at page 10 you see the clue and it's this big, and you immediately know what happened. And the same happened to me a little later on with the second case, the missing child from the woman in jail. It just didn't work for me. But having said that, I still think it's a good book, and I would also like to give you a different view on it. So I will link a review by Russell over at Ink and Paper Blog, who is a fantastic channel but also a blog. So I will link his review because he really loved the book, and then you can make up your own mind. The next book I read is a book that made the rounds on BookTube and in the papers even before it was published. It was published just in September now, and that is Celeste Ng's new novel, Little Fires Everywhere. Now, Celeste Ng doesn't need an introduction. She's a Chinese-American author, and her first book, Everything I Never Told You, was an international bestseller. I didn't love Everything I Never Told You as much as most people. I thought the characters were, for me, a little too cardboard. It was too, they were there in order to make a certain point, and I didn't think the plot was that convincing. So I thought it was still a good book, certainly for a debut, and I was looking forward to her next book. But I should tell you that I'm not one of the, huge fans of Everything I Never Told You. So I was going into Little Fires Everywhere with a little bit of nervous anticipation. Now, Little Fires Everywhere is set in a suburb of Cleveland, Shaker Heights, where Celeste Ng grew up herself. And it's set around a family, the Richardsons, especially the mother, Elena Richardson. They are a well-to-do family. Both Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, as they are referred to in the novel, have careers, they work, and they have 4 children, Trip, Lexi, Moody, and Izzy. And the story takes off when a newcomer moves into this very, secure and rule-oriented neighborhood of Shaker Heights. And that is Mia Warren, a 30-something artist with her 15-year-old daughter, Pearl. Now, the book opens at the end of the story when the house where the Richardson family lives in is burned down. And it's clear, that's not a spoiler because that is told right the second page, that Izzy, the youngest daughter, probably set the house on fire. And on the 5th page or something, the firemen say, well, there was fire in every room. There were little fires everywhere. That's where the title comes from. And then from this sort of prologue point of view, we learn what happened the year before when Mia and Pearl moved into the neighborhood, and when Pearl, befriends the Richardson children, and we also learn about a good friend of Mrs. Richardson, Linda. With her husband, they adopted a baby, a Chinese baby, and there's a court case because the mother then turns up and wants to regain custody. So the book is really centered about themes like identity, cultural heritage, but also family, and how to deal with something that is outside of the rules. What I really loved about the book were the characters. I think Celeste Ng has a really very good way of telling us about characters, the backstories, the way she makes us feel that we know the characters, I thought was brilliantly done, and you immediately had the feeling that you know these people. I thought that was brilliant. But what I didn't that much enjoy, and that was exactly the same with the first book, was how the plot was developed. I thought there were too many unlikely coincidences that were just there. You could feel the author. The author needed something to happen in a certain way, and then you had this rather unlikely coincidence. And the characters for me were how can I put it? Servants of the plot. That doesn't sound right because a character should be a servant of the plot, but in a way that you felt the author move the chess pieces around the board in order, to make things fit. And in addition, I thought there were too many loose ends. But I still, I gobbled the book down, so it was a good read. And I also thought it made you think about the questions I mentioned, like identity and cultural heritage. And also the title. I found a really interesting video done by Joyce over at Scribbles Reads about all the little fires that she discovered in the book. So I leave a link to her video down below because I thought that was really interesting. So all in all, it was a good read, but not as perfect as I would have wished maybe, but still an enjoyable read. And then at last, very briefly, the book that I not started yet, but probably will start because I couldn't really make up my mind what I want to read next. And I thought I've sort of neglected nonfiction a bit during the last 2 weeks, so I picked up this book, Iris Murdoch, A Writer at War. That's her letters and diaries in the years in the 30s and 40s. I found this book in a thrift shop. I think I told you already a while ago, and it's in perfect condition, and I love Iris Murdoch. So this will probably be the book that I will be reading next. So this was it for this week's Books Weekly. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, please talk to me down in the comments if you read any of the books, or if you want to talk to me. I leave links to my other social medias also down below, and I'll see you all soon in my next video. Bye bye.